Okay, welcome to Chapter 1, Section 2. We're looking at government systems and different systems, different forms of government. Okay, so one way that we categorize government is the relationship between local governments or regional governments and the national government. And so we have two basic types. We have unitary and federal. Unitary, typically we find these in smaller governments where the government controls most functions of the government. So sometimes we use the term centralized government. And then a federal government, yeah, and the United States has this type of government, is where there's a mixture, and there is the government holds certain powers and functions, and the state governments hold certain powers and functions. The reason we have a federal government is because initially, upon independence, each colony became a separate and independent country. And then eventually, we ratified that as the Confederacy, the Articles of Confederation. And then later, we scrapped that and then reorganized under a federalistic system based upon the U.S. Constitution. And so when we look at and then another type is a confederation, which is similar. Again, like I said, we had that initially through independence, and very shortly we realized it just didn't work. It is a loose organization of states, and the reason it wasn't work is there was no way for the central government to force the state governments to pay them to cover basic costs. So it just when it came to issues of war and being able to raise a large military, the federal government was reliant on the states to send money or send people, and it just wasn't working well enough. So we created a federalized system to make a much stronger type of government. And so the closest thing to a confederacy today will be the European Union. Each country in the European Union retains sovereignty with the exception of the economic system. They've unified their economic system under the euro. So there's no longer a euro or Deutschmark or a peso in Spain. We now have a euro that is the sole source of currency. And so confederacies are often something that happens as you're moving from a loose alliance to something a little bit more connected. That's where you move to a confederacy, and then later on, we see a lot of those systems move over to a federal system. And the nice thing about a federal system is it still retains certain amount of power for the local the local governments, sort of like what we have with the United States. Each state retains a fair amount of power in the local realm. A constitution is just any written plan of government, and many countries have a constitution, but the government doesn't follow it. So in that situation, in word, it's a constitutional government, but if the Constitution has no power, real power, to limit government, then we really don't use the term constitutional government. And all I can say is we follow the law because the law is there, and then the law is there, so we follow it. Becomes kind of this circular thing. The longer we follow the law of the Constitution, the more likely we're to follow it. At any point in time, it is possible for a constitutional government to tear up the Constitution and move to some other form of law. This semester we'll be looking at politics, and there's a lot of different things that you're doing, and just looking closely at the definition right there, the effort to control or influence. And this is an important thing to understand, that you don't have to be in a position of power to exert change in the system. And that's one of the things we'll look at this semester is the many different ways that you can be involved and have some influence, whether it is helping somebody run for a position or trying to influence somebody who is in a position of power. All right, that is Chapter 1, Section 2.